Nearly all of today's lecture has been conceptual in nature, and you're probably itching to get back into some software to do hands-on work. For today's participation assignment, you will be implementing some formatting features in Power BI with the end goal of your being able to apply what we've learned about data visualization best practices. Go ahead and open the Power BI file in connection with today's lecture. To give you some background information, let's suppose we work at an electronics manufacturer and we sell 4 types of products: fitness trackers, portable speakers, wireless chargers, and earbuds. And despite some aggressive marketing tactics, we've noticed that our sales performance is stagnant. So after running some numeric analyses and engaging in exploratory data visualization, we've determined that fitness trackers are the culprit. Since we already have this insight, our job is to now communicate these findings using explanatory visualization techniques. Let's acquaint ourselves with the data. It seems that we have 3 tables in the Power BI file: customer ratings, products, and sales, each containing some fields that seem straightforward, but we know that we could peruse the data by toggling to table view. For instance, what do the ratings data look like? It seems like customers are able to provide feedback on a product and give it a score between 1 to 5 regarding their satisfaction. Let's assume that 5 stars is ideal and 1 star indicates major complaints. To see if these tables are related, we can go to Model View and scan for any relationships. And in fact, we see that they are all connected on the field Product ID, which means that the data in both the sales and customer ratings table is linked back to this product's information. Let's go back to Report View and start by creating a visual to display the distribution of customer satisfaction scores. Remember that choosing the right type of visual is the first step towards high-quality data visualization. I want to compare satisfaction across 4 groups. A bar chart seems like a good candidate. Let's start with a stacked bar chart, the very first option. Because it is horizontally oriented, the categories will be the y-axis, and the continuous outcome measure will be the x-axis. So I drag and drop product name to my y-axis and satisfaction score to the x-axis. I could have used product ID for my categories, but it's likely that my audience isn't going to know which ID number corresponds to which product, so I've opted to just use the name. We also notice and remember that for numeric fields like the satisfaction score, summing up the values will be the default aggregation method. So the length of these bars currently represents adding up all the customer ratings. I'm not sure that makes sense for now, but to finish off the basic construction of this visual, I'm going to drag satisfaction score again one more time to the legend, which breaks up each bar by the groups. One of the first things that I notice is that the length of these bars is pretty different. Maybe we got differing amounts of feedback on these products, but again, it's important to recall that each of these bars is summing up the scores within each category. So the length of a single 5-star review is going to equal the length of 5 1-star ratings. This is going to disproportionately weight the higher ratings, so we need to change the aggregation method in our x-axis from sum to count. This has leveled out the length of the bars a little bit, but I can still see that we did in fact have varying amounts of responses per product. I wonder if it will help if we use a clustered column chart, the 4th option on the first row. I think this certainly does give the general idea that fitness trackers are doing poorly. The count of 1-star ratings in that group is clearly higher than all the rest. But one drawback from this presentation is that it's going to involve a lot of scanning from left to right to make many comparisons when we want to draw the reader's attention quickly to a takeaway. Let's try again, but this time with a 100% stacked bar chart, the 5th option. This now shows the proportion of each response within groups, a different way to compare apples to apples. So what do you think? With these default options, are we ready to send this visual to our boss? I hope you're not satisfied with it yet. We've learned principles of high quality visualization. We've practiced critiquing low quality visuals. Hopefully this has prepared us to know how to proceed to make improvements here. Our visual does not currently emphasize its takeaway, and there are several unnecessary chart elements that we can simplify away. So let's start learning some formatting techniques. First, if you ever just want to change the text of the fields being presented, you can do it by double-clicking any of our visual inputs and renaming them. For example, instead of count of satisfaction score, maybe I want the x-axis to be titled Ratings Breakdown. Perhaps instead of product name, we could leave this just as product. These are okay changes for now, but as you'll soon see, we might get rid of the axis titles altogether, so I actually prefer to do nearly all of these types of changes in the Format Visual tab of the Visualizations pane. So with our bar chart selected, I toggle to this tab, and we can see that we've got both visual specific as well as general options. As a quick disclaimer, there are many different things that you can implement here, and I couldn't cover half of them in one lecture even if I tried. I will show you ones that I find particularly useful, but then I'll leave it to you to explore and experiment to find other options that you find effective. Let's start with the y-axis. I click the drop down, and you can see that we can really start to go down a rabbit hole with a series of subsequent choices. Our visual currently lists the names of the products, but also has a y-axis title of product. It feels a little redundant, right? Whoever is going to see this visual doesn't need the helpful reminder that each of these 4 categories are in fact products. So I'm going to turn off the title of this axis. We could, of course, format the font of the different groups, resize or make them bold, but I'm happy with the defaults. I'll collapse the y-axis options and move on to x-axis. If we want to change the range of our chart, we could do it here. With 100% stacked charts, we can always keep the default from 0 to 100%. We could also retitle this axis here, but again, I think this is something we can communicate in the chart's overall title. So I'm going to turn this feature off as well. We'll collapse this and move on to legend. Now this is one of those cases where we actually need to keep the legend so that our readers can tell what color indicates which rating. However, I might change its position from top left to bottom center. I do this strategically to keep it close to the group where I want to keep my audience's attention. And again, I'll remove the title. I can communicate that these are satisfaction scores or ratings elsewhere. We could modify grid lines here, but I would say that Power BI typically has pretty good defaults for grid lines. It always includes them, but they are also always so faint that they are sufficiently present so as to be useful but unobtrusive. Perhaps one of the single most important changes we can make is to the color of these bars. I don't really love this mix of blue, orange, purple, and magenta. It doesn't convey any information beyond just splitting up the rating distribution. We can do better than that. When I click on bars, we can make modifications to individual bars as well as the entire chart at once. I want to recolor each bar individually, maybe going from an angry red color to indicate the most negative ratings to a darker blue for more positive ratings. So I'll change this from 5 to 1 and pick a red color. As you're following along with me, don't feel any need to get the exact colors right. Go ahead and be creative and make your own color scale as you think is best. I think our visual is already starting to do a pretty good job of illustrating the differences in ratings, but I want to add a couple final steps. At this point, our visual is starting to do a pretty good job of illustrating the differences in ratings, but we can do even more to emphasize the takeaway. I'll collapse bars and now go to data labels and turn them on. With 5 ratings across 4 groups, this will be 20 numbers for our audience to look at. So once again, I'm going to go through each series individually and turn off the option Show for this series for all of these series except number 1. So going to 2, we'll turn it off. Same with 3, 4, and 5. I'll toggle back to series 1, scroll down a bit, and under detail, I can change the number of value decimal places from automatic to 0. We don't need to be that precise. Whole percentages will be sufficient to almost instantaneously communicate that the number of 1-star reviews for fitness trackers is more than double the next most frequent product. The last thing I want to edit is the chart's title. The default is technically accurate, but this is my chance to describe both A, what the chart technically conveys, but also B, what the takeaway is. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top of my Format Visual tab and go from Visual to General. The only one you should ever mess with here is probably just Title. I think I'll include a main title and change the text to Product Rating Distribution. It's relatively short, but sufficiently describes what's going on here. Going further down, I'm going to turn on the subtitle, and I'll edit it to add some additional description. Now, I'm not trying to teach you how to create clickbait headlines, but I am trying to help you engage in data storytelling. And injecting a little bit of humor can be effective as well. Maybe I'll type something like, fitness trackers counting steps, not smiles. I encourage you to be creative, but also be reasonable. I mean, what if the problem with these trackers is that they don't even count steps very well, and that's why customers are angry? In that case, this subtitle might backfire. But taking the risk that the humor is going to be played off well, I think we've put together a pretty high quality visualization. Power BI will also let you add text boxes, which can give additional opportunity for annotation. Going up to the top, I'll click text box, and now maybe we can explicitly signal something like, fitness trackers had more than double the amount of 1-star ratings compared to any other category. I'll resize this, drag it to the top, and I think that's great. Let's navigate to the next page to try this again with a line chart. We'll move a little faster this time. Let's say we want to display trends in the unit sales of these products for the most recent fiscal year. We already know that line charts are best for displaying trends. I'll drag my date variable to the x-axis and units sold to the y-axis. As a final data input, I'll drag product name to legend. Let's resize this and expand down 2 levels in the hierarchy to present the data on a monthly basis. And lastly, I want to impose a filter to show the most recent fiscal year. And to make things interesting, let's suppose our company has a September 30th fiscal year end. To do this, I'm going to drag my date variable to our filters, change my filter type to be advanced, and I want to show items where the value of date is after 9/30/2025, we'll leave and checked here, and is before 10/1/2026. Be sure to click Apply Filter. Now that the line chart has its basic shape, we can apply some real formatting. I'm once again going to turn off the titles for both of my axes. People will inherently understand the time dimension, and I can describe that units sold as the Y variable in my overall title. I do, however, want to change the minimum range for my Y-axis from automatic to 0. I think this gives a more faithful representation of the story. It's not like we've stopped selling fitness trackers by the end of the year. The product is simply experiencing a greater decline relative to the other categories. I'm going to turn off the legend. I don't need it for this visual. And this time around, let's also turn off the grid lines, both horizontal and vertical. An important step will be changing the lines themselves. And once again, I can format individual lines. So starting with fitness tracker, I'm going to recolor its line, expand down color, to match that angry red negative color from the prior visual. Remember, we want to be consistent with our color use, and while we didn't use color to separate products on the prior visual, we did use it to describe positive versus negative outcomes. So that's why I'm comfortable selecting this color. Let's give the other products a gray color. I'll collapse our lines options. I won't add data labels to this chart, but I will turn on series labels. This will indicate the products represented by each line. And as a final step, let's give the line chart a descriptive title. Going up to General, I'll keep the main title extremely short and to the point. Units sold. As a subtitle, I will throw in something like fitness tracker sales sharply decline after 2025 holiday season. And with that, we'll conclude with this example. I truly hope that you have a sense of what you've learned today. Whereas other data analytics courses will purely focus on how to construct visuals, you are now prepared to go above and beyond to engage in high-quality data visualization. So go ahead and save your Power BI file and submit it to Canvas for your participation today. You are now prepared to tackle the final case of the semester, where you will engage in both exploratory and explanatory data visualization.